The invitation to the annual Sullivan family reunion sat on my desk, its gold-embossed lettering catching the morning light streaming through my penthouse windows. 15 years of carefully maintained deception were about to end, and oddly enough, it wasn't even my choice. I picked up my phone and reread the email that had triggered everything. Forbes 30 under 40, the new face of digital art. Sophia Sullivan's NFT empire reaches $3.8 billion valuation. The article would be published tomorrow, just 2 days before the family reunion. My carefully constructed facade was about to shatter, and there was nothing I could do about it. "Miss Sullivan?" My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your brother Marcus is on line 1. Again." Of course he was. He'd been calling nonstop since the press release went out to major publications. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Hello, Marcus." "What the hell, Sophia?" He didn't bother with pleasantries. "I just got a call from Business Insider asking for a comment about my billionaire sister. Want to explain that?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. "I guess you'll have to wait for the article like everyone else." "Cut the crap," he snapped. "All these years, you've been letting us think you were barely getting by. Mom and Dad have been worried sick about you." I couldn't help but laugh. "Worried? Is that what you call it?" The constant lectures about getting a real job. The snide comments about how I'm wasting my potential. They were trying to help. No, they were trying to control me. Just like they tried to control you, and you let them. Silence fell on the other end of the line. Marcus had always been the good child, following our parents' carefully planned path. Business school, MBA, joining our father's investment firm. The golden son who never strayed from the script. Just tell me one thing," he finally said. "How long? How long have you been hiding this?" I stood up and walked to the window, watching a private helicopter land on a nearby building's helipad. My helicopter, actually. One of 3 I owned. Remember when I moved to that tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn? When you first started with your digital art nonsense. That was, he paused, calculating. 15 years ago. That's right. Everyone thought I was crazy, throwing away my finance degree to doodle on computers, as Dad called it. But what none of you knew was that I'd already sold my first NFT collection for $50,000. $50,000? Back then? And 6 months later, I sold another for $200,000. By the time Dad was telling everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I had my first million. I could almost hear him doing the math in his head. But you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that beat-up Honda until last year. I never borrowed money from them, Marcus. I asked them to invest in my company. They refused, loudly and repeatedly. The Honda was a choice, not a necessity. Just like this penthouse was a choice. And the private jet, and everything else I kept hidden from all of you. Private jet. His voice cracked. Jesus, Sophia. How rich are you exactly? I smiled, remembering all the family dinners where they treated me like the poor relative. The way our younger sister Olivia would ostentatiously pick up the check, making sure everyone knew she was helping out her struggling artist sister. The Forbes article will say $3.8 billion, but that's a conservative estimate. The real number is closer to 5. The sound Marcus made was somewhere between a gasp and a choke. "Now, if you'll excuse me," I continued, "I have a board meeting to attend. Oh, and Marcus, I'll see you at the family reunion. I'm thinking of making quite an entrance." I hung up before he could respond and pressed the intercom. Sarah, is everything set for the reunion? Yes, Miss Sullivan. The jet is fueled and ready. The car service is arranged for all family members to be picked up in Rolls-Royces. The venue has been updated to the private island as requested, and the NDAs have been prepared for all staff. Perfect. I picked up the reunion invitation again. For 15 years, I'd played the role they expected, the artistic black sheep who couldn't handle the real world, the daughter who needed constant reminders about financial responsibility, the sister who was pitied and patronized at every family gathering. But not this time. My phone buzzed with a text from my youngest sister Olivia. OMG Soph, please tell me this Forbes thing is a joke. What's going on? I left it unanswered. Olivia, who never failed to mention her six-figure salary at every family gathering. Olivia, who loved to reminisce about how she'd made it, while her big sister was still finding herself. The intercom buzzed again. Miss Sullivan, your parents are both on the line. Tell them I'm in a meeting. I checked my watch. And Sarah, call the helipad. I think I'll take the chopper to the board meeting today. As I gathered my things, my mind wandered back to the day that started it all. The day I decided to hide my success from my family. 15 years earlier. Digital art isn't real art, Sophia. My father's voice boomed across the dinner table. And this NFT nonsense? It's a fad, a scam. No one's going to pay real money for pictures on a computer. I sat there, 22 years old, fresh out of college, trying to explain my vision to my family. The same family that had paid for an Ivy League finance degree they expected me to use at my father's firm. Actually, Dad, I just sold my first collection for. Enough. He cut me off. I don't want to hear about your little hobby. Either you come work for the firm like we planned, or you're on your own. No more support, no more safety net. My mother reached across the table, patting my hand condescendingly. Sweetie, we just want what's best for you. You need stability, a real career. I looked around the table at their faces, my father's disappointment, my mother's concerned frown, Marcus's smug smile, Olivia's barely concealed disdain. That was the moment I made my decision. I wouldn't tell them about the $50,000 sale, or the 3 galleries that wanted to represent me, or the tech companies reaching out about collaborations. You're right, I said, standing up. I need to figure this out on my own. 2 weeks later, I moved into the smallest, cheapest studio apartment I could find in Brooklyn. My family assumed I was struggling, living on my savings, too proud to admit defeat. In reality, I was building an empire. The first year was intense. I worked 18-hour days, developing my artistic style, learning about blockchain technology, building connections in the crypto art world. My first major collection, Digital Dreams in Binary, sold out in hours, bringing in $1.2 million. I took that money and invested it back into the business, hiring developers, creating new platforms for artists, innovating in ways the traditional art world couldn't imagine. But every time I visited home, I drove my old Honda, wore simple clothes, lived the part of the struggling artist. At least let me help with your rent, my mother would offer, while my father shook his head in disappointment. No thanks, Mom. I'm doing fine. And I was, more than fine. By the end of that first year, my net worth had hit $10 million. By year 3, $100 million. But to my family, I was still just Sophia, the dreamer who couldn't face reality. Now, 15 years later, as I stepped into my private helicopter, I thought about how it had all spiraled into something bigger than I'd intended. The little deception had become a massive secret, and in 2 days, everything would change. My phone buzzed again. A message from my father. "We need to talk now." I smiled and turned off the phone. They'd have to wait for the reunion. After 15 years of hearing about my failures, they were about to learn about my success. And I was going to make sure it was a revelation they'd never forget. The Forbes article dropped at exactly 6:00 a.m. Eastern Time. I was already awake, sipping coffee in my home office, watching the chaos unfold on my multiple screens. Digital art revolutionary. How Sophia Sullivan built a multi-billion-dollar empire in secret. The headline was accompanied by a photo I'd specifically chosen for this moment. Me standing in front of my most successful NFT collection, wearing clothes that cost more than my sister Olivia's monthly salary. The article didn't just reveal my wealth. It detailed every success I'd hidden for 15 years. My phone exploded with notifications. First came the family group chat. "Olivia, is this for real? $3.8 billion? Marcus, I tried to warn you all yesterday. Mom, Sophia, please answer your phone. Dad, this must be some kind of mistake. Aunt Patricia, just saw the article. Is our Sophia the Sophia Sullivan?" I muted the chat and pulled up my emails. Hundreds of interview requests from major news outlets, investment opportunities, speaking engagements. But one email caught my eye. From my father's business partner, Albert Chen. "Sophia, I believe we need to discuss potential synergies between Sullivan Investments and your digital art platforms. Your father may have mentioned some concerns, but I assure you we can be quite flexible." I couldn't help but laugh. 3 years ago, I'd approached a firm about a partnership. Albert had personally shown me the door, saying they didn't deal in internet pictures. My intercom buzzed. "Miss Sullivan, your mother is in the lobby. She's quite insistent." I checked the security feed. There was my mother, Alina Sullivan, still perfectly put together in her designer suit, but with an unfamiliar wildness in her eyes as she argued with the security guard. "Let her up," I sighed. It was time to face at least one member of my family. The private elevator opened directly into my penthouse. My mother stepped out, then froze, taking in her surroundings. The vast open space, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the original Basquiat on the wall that probably cost more than their house. "Sophia," she breathed, her voice unsteady. "What? What is all this?" "This is my home, Mom. The real one, not the small apartment I keep for family visits." She walked to the window, her heel clicks echoing on the marble floor. "How long have you? How did you?" 15 years, I said, pouring her a cup of coffee. Since the day Dad said my digital art would never amount to anything. She turned, her face a mixture of confusion and hurt. "But you struggled. We saw it. The tiny apartment, the old car, borrowing money for rent." "I never borrowed money." I corrected her. "I asked you and Dad to invest in my company. There's a difference. And everything else, the apartment, the car, that was all just theater." "Theater?" Her voice rose. "You've been lying to us for 15 years. "No, Mom. I just let you see what you wanted to see. You all were so convinced I was failing that you never bothered to look closer." She sank into one of my Italian leather chairs, looking suddenly old. "Does anyone else know? In the family?" "No one." "Well, Marcus found out yesterday when the press release went out. I suppose he tried to warn you. She nodded weakly. He called, but your father was sure it was a mistake. Some other Sophia Sullivan. I walked to my desk and pulled out a file. Here's something that might interest you. The investment opportunity I tried to present to Dad 3 years ago. If he had invested the $1 million I asked for, his share would be worth roughly $100 million today. Her hands trembled as she took the file. He said you wanted a handout, that you were too proud to admit your art wasn't working out. And you believed him, just like you believed him about my struggling artist life. Tell me, Mom, in 15 years, did any of you ever actually come to one of my shows, check out my work, even Google my name? She couldn't meet my eyes. That's what I thought. I walked to the window, looking down at the city I now partially owned. The annual family reunion is in 2 days. I've made some changes to the arrangements. Changes? I bought out the entire resort where it was supposed to be held. Too public. Instead, everyone will be picked up by my private cars and taken to my jet. We'll be having the reunion on my island. Your island? In the Caribbean. I bought it last year when I closed my first $1 billion deal. I turned to face her. And Mom? This time, I won't be the one sitting quietly while everyone talks about their successes. This time, I have some things to say. She stood up, smoothing her skirt with shaking hands. Your father, when he sees all this, he'll finally have to admit that his little girl playing with computer pictures built something bigger than his entire family legacy. I smiled. And that's just the beginning. I walked her to the elevator, but before she could step in, I added one last thing. Oh, and Mom, that Bentley you've been dreaming about, but Dad says is too expensive. I bought 3 last month, just because I could. The elevator doors closed on her shocked face. As soon as she was gone, I called my assistant. Sarah, is everything ready for the reunion? Yes, Ms. Sullivan. The island staff is prepared. The documentation packages have been assembled for each family member, showing exactly when they dismissed your investment opportunities and what those shares would be worth today. And the video presentation of your success timeline is ready. Perfect. I picked up my phone and finally replied to the family group chat with a single message. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion. Dress appropriately for a private island. Transportation will be provided. Then I opened my laptop to check the market. The Forbes article had sent my company's stock soaring. Another $1 billion added to my net worth before breakfast. I thought about my father, probably sitting in his office right now, trying to understand how his failing daughter had quietly become one of the richest people in the country. About my sister Olivia, who loved to brag about her 6-figure salary and vacation home in the Hamptons, realizing I could buy her entire life with what I made in interest each day. The reunion was going to be interesting. Very interesting indeed. My phone buzzed again. A message from my father. We need to meet. Before the reunion. Family matters should be discussed privately. I typed back. Everything will be discussed at the reunion, Dad. After all, isn't that what family reunions are for? Sharing our successes? Then I called Sarah again. Contact the design team. I want the island's helipad repainted before the reunion. And make sure my name is visible from the air when they land. Already done, Ms. Sullivan. Anything else? I thought about 15 years of condescension, of pity, of being treated like the family failure. Yes, make sure the Forbes article is framed and hanging in every room of the island resort. I wanted to be the first thing they see, no matter where they turn. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window, successful, powerful, and finally ready to show my family exactly who I'd become while they were busy doubting me. The countdown to the reunion had begun. The day of the Sullivan family reunion dawned clear and bright. I stood on the tarmac of my private airfield, watching as 3 Rolls-Royces approached in formation. My family had arrived. The cars stopped, and the doors opened. First came my father, his usual commanding presence diminished somehow. My mother, still looking shaken from our meeting 2 days ago. Marcus, Olivia, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins followed, all wearing expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed resentment. And there, front and center, sat my gleaming private jet, with Sullivan Digital Empire emblazoned on its side in elegant lettering. "Welcome, everyone," I said, my voice carrying across the tarmac. I trust the ride was comfortable. Sophia, my father stepped forward, trying to regain his authoritative tone. "This is unnecessary. We could have had a perfectly good reunion at the resort." I smiled. "The resort was too public, Dad. Besides, I think it's time for some real family bonding. On my island." "Your island?" Olivia muttered, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "Of course you have an island." The flight was interesting, to say the least. As my family members settled into the luxurious cabin, their eyes darted everywhere, taking in the opulent details, the solid gold fixtures, the rare art pieces, the vintage champagne being served by an immaculately trained staff. Is that a real Picasso?" Aunt Patricia whispered, staring at the artwork mounted on a cabin wall. "Yes," I replied casually. "I bought it last year, along with a few others." My father cleared his throat. "Sophia, perhaps we should discuss." "We'll discuss everything when we land, Dad. For now, enjoy the flight. The champagne is particularly good. Cost more than your company's quarterly profits." He flinched. "Good." 2 hours later, we began our descent. Through the windows, my private island came into view. 300 acres of tropical paradise, with a state-of-the-art resort complex at its center. And there, visible from the air just as I'd planned, was my name in letters large enough to be seen from space. "Sophia Sullivan." As we landed, I heard Olivia gasp. The helipad was surrounded by displays showing my most successful NFT collections, each with their sale prices prominently displayed. Millions upon millions of dollars in digital art projected onto massive screens. "Welcome to Sullivan Island," I announced as we disembarked. "My own little piece of paradise." "Little?" Marcus choked out. The resort complex sprawled before us, a masterpiece of modern architecture seamlessly blended with natural beauty. "Everyone's rooms have been assigned," I continued. "You'll find some reading material waiting for you. I suggest you review it before dinner." The reading material was carefully curated for each family member. For my father, documentation of every investment opportunity of mine he dismissed, along with current valuations. For Olivia, a comparison of her annual salary versus what I made in interest each day. For Marcus, details of how his firm had lost millions by refusing to work with my company. I gave them an hour to settle in and digest the information. Then I had them summoned to the main dining room. The room was a masterpiece of design, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. A massive table dominated the space, each place setting probably worth more than most people's cars. And on every wall, that Forbes article, beautifully framed. My family filed in slowly, looking shell-shocked. They changed for dinner, but even their expensive clothes looked somehow inadequate in these surroundings. "Please sit." I gestured to the table. "We have a lot to discuss." "Safia," my father began as soon as everyone was seated. "I think I speak for everyone when I say we're surprised." "Surprised?" I laughed softly. "That's an interesting word choice. Not angry that I deceived you. Not hurt that I hid my success. Just surprised." "We didn't know," my mother said quietly. "You didn't want to know," I corrected her. "Every time I tried to tell you about my work, you changed the subject. Every time I offered investment opportunities, you dismissed them. You were so convinced I was failing that you couldn't see my success, even when it was right in front of you." "But the apartment," Olivia interjected. "The old car. All those times you let me pay for dinner because you thought I couldn't afford it." I finished for her. "Did you enjoy that, Olivia? Playing the successful sister. Making sure everyone knew you were helping out poor, struggling Sophia?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "Let me show you something," I said, pressing a button. Screens descended from the ceiling, displaying a timeline of my success alongside their dismissive comments over the years. 2008. Digital art isn't real art. Dad, my first collection sells for $50,000. 2010. When are you going to get a real job? Mom, company valuation hits $10 million. 2015. At least I can afford to help my sister out. Olivia, net worth passes $500 million. 2020. We don't invest in internet pictures. Dad's firm, company valuation reaches $1 billion. Every doubt, every dismissal, every condescending comment, I said quietly. I remembered them all. And with each one, I built something bigger. "Why?" My father's voice cracked. "Why hide it?" "Because you needed to learn something. All of you did. Success doesn't look just one way. Innovation doesn't follow your predetermined path. And sometimes, the child you wrote off as a failure might just be the one who succeeds beyond your wildest dreams." I stood up, walking to the window. Do you know what the hardest part was? Not the secrecy. Not pretending to struggle. It was watching you all celebrate mediocrity while dismissing true innovation. "Mediocrity?" Marcus bristled. "Yes, mediocrity. You followed Dad's safe path, Marcus. Got the job he wanted you to get. Made the safe investments. And you," I turned to Olivia, "you bragged about your 6-figure salary while I was making that much in minutes." "That's enough." My father stood up. "You've made your point. We were wrong. Is that what you want to hear?" "No, Dad. What I want is for you to understand. Really understand. This," I gestured to the luxury around us, "isn't about money. It's about vision. The vision you couldn't see because you were too busy clinging to the past." I pressed another button, and new images appeared on the screens. My latest project, a revolutionary platform that would transform how digital art was created, bought, and sold. "This launches next month," I said. "Conservative estimates put its value at $10 billion. I'm showing you this because for once, I want you to see what I'm building before it happens. No more dismissing it. No more doubting." The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Finally, my mother spoke. "We're proud of you, Safia. We should have been proud all along." "Thank you, Mom. But I didn't do this for your pride. I did it because it was my dream, my vision. And now, I smiled. It's my empire. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Now we have dinner. As a family. But this time, we'll do it my way. No more pretending. No more hiding. And tomorrow, we'll tour the island, and I'll show you exactly what your daughter, sister, and niece has built while you weren't paying attention. I raised my glass. To the truth. Finally. They raised their glasses, looking somewhat dazed. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of gourmet food, fine wine, and gradually thawing conversations. My family was beginning to see me. Really see me, for the first time in 15 years. As they retired to their rooms that night, I stayed in the dining room, looking out at the moonlit ocean. My assistant Sarah appeared at my side. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. The big reveal. I thought about the looks on their faces, the shock, the realization, the gradual understanding. Yes, I said, but not for the reasons I expected. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about finally being free to be completely myself. And tomorrow, I smiled. Tomorrow, we show them the future. Their safe, predictable world of traditional investments and conventional success is over. It's time for them to understand that the daughter they wrote off as a dreamer wasn't just dreaming. She was building a new world while they weren't looking. Later that night, I found a note that had been slipped under my door, in my father's handwriting. I was wrong, not just about the business, but about everything. You didn't just succeed. You revolutionized an entire industry. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. Dad. I placed the note in a frame, right next to my first NFT sale receipt for $50,000. A reminder of where I started and how far I'd come. The next morning, as I watched my family gather for breakfast, their attitudes subtly changed. I realized something important. Success isn't just about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't in the revealing of success, but in the quiet knowledge that you built something extraordinary while everyone else was busy doubting you. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Sullivan Digital Empire announces revolutionary new platform. The future was calling, and this time, my family would watch it unfold in real time. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just success, on my terms. The day we buried my father was unseasonably cold for October. I stood at the edge of his grave, watching as mourners placed white roses on his casket, each flower a testament to the lives he touched during his 63 years. My sister Olivia clutched her husband's arm, her designer black dress and perfect makeup a stark contrast to my simple attire. Even at our father's funeral, she had to make a statement. He should have had a will, Olivia whispered to her husband, loud enough for me to hear. Now everything's going to be so complicated. I closed my eyes, trying to block out her voice. Trust Olivia to think about money while we were literally standing over Dad's grave. But she wasn't wrong. The lack of a will would make things messy. Dad's successful construction company, our childhood home, his investments, everything was now in limbo. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I understood my family. I was the quieter daughter, the one who chose to become a high school teacher instead of joining the family business. Olivia was the star, the one who went to business school and worked alongside Dad since she was old enough to read a contract. Sarah. My mother's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She stood beside me, elegant even in grief, her silver hair perfectly styled. Come with me for a moment, dear. We walked away from the crowd, past the rows of granite headstones, until we reached a massive oak tree. Mom's hands trembled as she reached into her purse and pulled out a cream-colored envelope, sealed with wax, in an old-fashioned way that was so characteristic of my father. "Your father wanted you to have this," she whispered, pressing the envelope into my hands. "Open it when you're alone. And Sarah," she hesitated, her eyes meeting mine, "whatever you read, remember that your father loved you." Before I could respond, she turned and walked back to the funeral, leaving me holding an envelope that felt heavier than paper should. I slipped it into my purse, my mind racing with questions. Why me? Why not Olivia? And why did Mom look so worried? The wake was held at our family home, a sprawling Victorian mansion that Dad had lovingly restored over the years. I watched as Olivia commanded attention in the living room, sharing stories about working with Dad, about how she was his right hand at the company. Our relatives nodded approvingly. Of course, Olivia would take over the business now. It was what everyone expected. "Sarah, darling," my Aunt Margaret approached, martini in hand. "I hope you're not too worried about all this. I'm sure Olivia will take care of you." I forced a smile, feeling the envelope burn in my purse. "I'm fine, Aunt Margaret. I have my own life, my own career." "Yes, teaching," she said with a slight grimace. "Well, it's admirable work, dear. Though your father always hoped you join the family business." I excused myself and escaped to Dad's study, the one room in the house that still felt entirely his. The leather chair behind his massive oak desk still held the impression of his frame. His reading glasses lay on a stack of contracts, as if he just stepped out for a moment. The envelope felt heavy in my hands as I finally pulled it out. The wax seal bore Dad's signet ring impression, the family crest he'd had specially made when the business took off. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and pulled out several pages of Dad's distinctive handwriting. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and the time has come for you to know the truth about our family's legacy and why I've worked so hard to protect you from it." I continued reading, my hands shaking more with each paragraph. The words on the page couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake. But as I read further, pieces of my childhood began falling into place. Strange conversations I'd overheard, mysterious business meetings, and why Dad had been so insistent that I stay away from the company. A knock at the study door made me jump. "Sarah?" Olivia's voice called out. "What are you doing in Dad's study? The lawyers are here to discuss the estate." I quickly folded the letter and slipped it back into my purse. "Coming," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos in my mind. As I walked back to the living room, where our family lawyer, Mr. Patterson, was setting up his briefcase, I felt the weight of Dad's words pressing down on me. The truth about the company, about what Olivia had done, about why Dad had never written a will. It was all there in black and white. "Now," Mr. Patterson began, adjusting his glasses, "since Mr. Mitchell died intestate, we'll need to follow state laws regarding the distribution of assets. The company being the primary asset." I tuned out his voice, watching Olivia's satisfied smile. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. Dad's letter had changed everything, and soon, very soon, our entire family would learn the truth about Mitchell Construction and the real reason behind Dad's sudden death. The afternoon dragged on as Mr. Patterson detailed the complex process ahead of us. Olivia took notes on her iPad, occasionally shooting me condescending looks as if to say, "Don't worry, I'll handle everything," if she only knew what was in that letter. Later that evening, as guests finally began to leave. Mom caught my eye from across the room. The look we shared spoke volumes. She knew what was in the letter. She knew that everything was about to change. I gathered my things and headed for the door, but Olivia stopped me. "Sarah, we need to talk about the company. I know you've never been interested in the business side of things, but we should discuss your shares. I'm thinking of buying you out. For a fair price, of course." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw what Dad had described in his letter. The ambition, the calculation, the absolute certainty that she deserved everything. "We'll talk soon, Olivia," I said quietly. "There's a lot to discuss." As I drove home that night, Dad's letter safely tucked in my purse, I couldn't stop thinking about his final words. "The truth will cost us everything, Sarah. But it's time for justice. You're the only one I trust to make it right." Tomorrow, I would start digging. Tomorrow, I would begin unraveling the carefully constructed lies that our family fortune was built on. But tonight, I would mourn my father, not just his death, but the weight he carried all these years, protecting me while watching his beloved company become something he never intended. The truth would indeed tear our family apart, but as Dad wrote, sometimes destruction is necessary for redemption. The morning after the funeral, I spread Dad's letter across my kitchen table, along with years of newspaper clippings I'd gathered overnight. The Mitchell construction story was one of local legend. How my father built an empire from nothing, transforming a small contracting business into one of the largest development companies in the state. But Dad's letter told a different story. The company's success, he wrote, came at a price I never intended to pay. When the accident happened at the Riverside project in 2018, I thought it was just that, an accident. But what I discovered in Olivia's files changed everything. I pulled up the news articles about the Riverside project on my laptop. 3 workers had died when a support beam collapsed during construction of a luxury apartment complex. The official investigation ruled it an equipment failure. Mitchell Construction paid the families handsomely, and the story faded from headlines. But according to Dad's letter, Olivia had known about the structural issues weeks before the collapse. She had received multiple reports warning about substandard materials. But instead of halting construction, she buried the reports and pressured inspectors to sign off on the project. "The evidence is in my private safe," Dad's letter continued. "The combination is your birthday. I knew Olivia would never think to try that. Inside, you'll find everything: the original reports, emails, and proof of the bribes. I spent the last 5 years trying to make it right without destroying our family's name. But after what I discovered last month about the new downtown development project, I can't stay silent anymore." My hands shook as I read the final paragraphs. Dad had confronted Olivia just days before his heart attack. The timing couldn't be coincidental. My phone buzzed, a text from Olivia. "Meeting with lawyers at 2 p.m. Don't be late like always." I stared at her message, remembering all the times she belittled me, dismissed me as the family failure. The sister who chose teaching over real success. If she only knew what Dad had entrusted me with. At 1:55 p.m., I walked into the Mitchell Construction headquarters. The 20-story building gleamed with success. Our family name emblazoned across the lobby in gold letters. Employees nodded respectfully. They all knew the boss's daughters. The conference room was already full. Olivia sat at the head of the table, in Dad's old seat. Mom sat quietly beside her, while various lawyers and executives filled the remaining chairs. "Sarah, how nice of you to join us," Olivia said, her tone dripping with condescension. "We've already begun discussing the transition plan. I took my seat, noting how everyone deferred to Olivia. She had spent years cultivating this image of herself as Dad's natural successor. As I was saying, she continued, the board has expressed full confidence in my leadership. Given Sarah's alternative career choices, we feel a clean transition would be best. We're prepared to offer a very generous buyout package. The family lawyer, Mr. Patterson, slid a document across the table. We valued your shares at $5 million, Sarah. Very generous, considering your lack of involvement in the company. I picked up the paper, pretending to read it while my mind raced. They had no idea about the safe, about what Dad had discovered, about what I now knew. Actually, I said quietly, I don't think I'll be selling my shares. The room fell silent. Olivia's perfect smile flickered for just a moment. Don't be difficult, Sarah, she said. You've never shown any interest in construction. What could you possibly want with shares in a company you don't understand? I met her gaze steadily. I understand more than you think, Olivia. In fact, I'd like to schedule a full board meeting for next week. There are some matters Dad wanted discussed. What matters? Olivia's voice had lost its smoothness. The Riverside project, for one, I said softly. And maybe we should talk about those irregularities Dad found in the downtown development plans. The color drained from Olivia's face. Mom gasped quietly. The lawyers exchanged confused glances. I don't know what you're talking about, Olivia said, but her hands were shaking as she shuffled her papers. I think you do. And I think it's time the board knew everything about the reports you buried, the inspectors you bribed, and exactly what happened the day Dad died. Olivia stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. This meeting is over. Everyone out, except my sister. As the room cleared, I could feel the tension building. Mom was the last to leave, her eyes filled with tears as she looked between her daughters. When we were alone, Olivia's mask cracked completely. Where did you get this information? Dad left me a letter, I said, standing to face her, and a safe full of evidence. Did you really think he didn't know? About Riverside? About everything? You're bluffing, she snarled. Dad would never. The safe combination is my birthday. I cut her off. When was the last time you remembered my birthday, Olivia? When was the last time you thought about anyone but yourself? She moved faster than I expected, grabbing my arm. Listen to me very carefully, little sister. You have no idea what you're getting into. Take the money and walk away. This is your only warning. I pulled free from her grip. No, Olivia. You listen. Next week, I'm going to open that safe, and everything you've built on lies is going to come crashing down. I walked out of the conference room, my heart pounding but my steps steady. In my purse, my phone was already recording, capturing every word of Olivia's threat. Dad had taught me well. Always keep evidence. That night, as I sat in my apartment reviewing more of Dad's documents, my phone rang. An unlisted number. Ms. Mitchell? A man's voice asked. My name is James Torres. I was the site supervisor at Riverside before your sister fired me. I heard about your father's death. And there's something you need to know. I grabbed a pen, my hand trembling slightly. I'm listening, Mr. Torres. The day before your father died, he came to see me. He said he was gathering evidence, that he was going to make things right. He asked me to testify if it came to that. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. And would you? Would you testify? There was a long pause. Yes, your father was a good man. What happened to him? It wasn't right. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, thinking about the path ahead. Dad's letter had unleashed a storm that would destroy everything: our family's reputation, the company he'd built, perhaps even our freedom. But as I looked at the photo of him on my desk, his kind eyes smiling at me, I knew I had to finish what he'd started. 3 families had lost loved ones at Riverside. How many more lives would be lost if Olivia's corruption continued? Tomorrow, I would visit the safe. Tomorrow, I would begin gathering allies. And soon, very soon, the truth about Mitchell Construction would finally come to light. The downtown offices were nearly empty when I arrived at 6 a.m. Only the cleaning staff and a few early bird employees roamed the halls. I took the executive elevator to Dad's private office on the top floor, my heart pounding with each ascending floor. The office remained untouched since his death. Family photos lined the walls, mostly of Olivia at company events, receiving awards, standing proudly beside Dad at groundbreaking ceremonies. Only one small frame held my college graduation photo, tucked away in a corner. The safe was hidden behind a large oil painting of the company's first building project. My hands trembled as I entered my birthday. 0 to 31 to 58 to 9. The mechanism clicked, and the heavy door swung open. Inside, organized with Dad's characteristic precision, lay folders upon folders of evidence, each one carefully labeled, dated, and annotated. But what caught my eye was a USB drive taped to the inside of the door with a note: security footage, my office, September 15th, 3 days before his death. I pulled out my laptop and plugged in the drive. The video showed Dad's office, this very room, from the security camera in the corner. Dad sat at his desk, looking tired but determined. Olivia stormed in, her face twisted with anger. The audio was crystal clear. "You can't do this." Olivia's voice crackled through my laptop speakers. "I built this company into what it is today." "You built it on lies," Dad replied calmly. "On corruption and bribes. Those families from Riverside deserve justice." "Justice?" Olivia laughed bitterly. "Where was your sense of justice when we were struggling? When we needed those first big contracts? You didn't care about cutting corners then." "I was wrong." Dad's voice was heavy with regret. "But this ends now. Tomorrow, I'm going to the board with everything." Olivia's next words chilled me to the bone. "No, you won't. You're going to take your heart medication and go home. And if you ever threaten this company again, remember, accidents happen in construction all the time." The video ended. I sat in Dad's chair, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just corruption anymore. This was murder. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Parking garage. Level B2. 10 minutes. Come alone." Everything in me screamed that this was a trap, but I had to know. I copied the USB drive, slipped one copy into my purse, and hid the other in a place Olivia would never look, inside the frame of my graduation photo. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet. A figure emerged from behind a concrete pillar. "Mom, I've been watching the security feeds," she said quietly. "I knew you'd come to the safe eventually." "Did you know?" I asked, my voice breaking. "About Olivia? About what she did to Dad?" Mom's face crumpled. "I suspected. The night before he died, your father changed his heart medication. He said if anything happened to him, I should give you that letter. He knew Sarah. He knew what she was capable of." Before I could respond, elevator doors dinged. Olivia's voice echoed through the garage. "Well, isn't this cozy?" A secret mother-daughter chat. She wasn't alone. Two large men in suits flanked her, their intentions clear in their stance. "I warned you to take the money," Olivia said, stepping closer. "Now you forced my hand." "Like you forced Dad's hand," I shot back. "What did you do, Olivia? Switch his medication? Make it look like a heart attack?" Her smile was cold. "Prove it." "Oh, I can," I replied, matching her tone. "The evidence is already with the FBI. Dad's files, the video from your confrontation, everything. Did you really think I'd come here without insurance?" The color drained from Olivia's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Check your phone." On cue, her phone buzzed. Mine too. Breaking news alerts flashed across our screens. MTCGEL construction under federal investigation. FBI raise ARTES. "You didn't," Olivia whispered. "I did. An hour ago, I met with federal agents. They're upstairs right now, seizing every computer, every file. It's over, Olivia." The sound of sirens filled the garage. Olivia's hired muscle melted away into the shadows. She turned to run, but Mom's voice stopped her. "Enough. My husband is dead because of you. 3 families lost their loved ones because of your greed. Face what you've done, Olivia." Federal agents swarmed the garage, led by Agent Sarah Torres, James Torres's daughter. Poetic justice, I thought, watching them handcuff my sister. "Sarah Mitchell?" Agent Torres approached me. "We found additional evidence in the office. Your father, he left a recorded confession about everything. He was building a case against the company, against your sister. He was trying to make it right." I nodded, tears flowing freely now. That's all he ever wanted, to make things right. The next few weeks passed in a blur of headlines. Mitsubishi Construction CEO, RRESTE, FORFFRAUD, and MURDR, RIVERSIDE, KRAGDU. The two Rulichidi revealed. Mitsubishi family empire crumbles, ANISVADAL. The company was dissolved, its assets seized. The families of the Riverside victims finally received justice and the truth about what happened to their loved ones. Mom and I moved away from the city, away from the whispers and pointed fingers. We bought a small house near my school, where I continued teaching. Sometimes, healing comes in the simplest forms. A year later, I visited Dad's grave alone. The family name had been tarnished, our fortune lost, but something more valuable had been saved: the truth. I placed a single rose on his headstone and whispered, "I did it, Dad. I made it right." As I walked away, I thought about that letter that had started everything. Dad knew that giving me that letter would destroy the company he built, tear apart our family, and expose decades of secrets. But he also knew that sometimes the cost of truth is worth paying. The Mitchell name no longer stood for power and success. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about greed, corruption, and the price of silence. But for me, it was simply the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. In my classroom, I teach my students about integrity, about standing up for what's right even when it costs you everything. I tell them that true legacy isn't measured in dollars or buildings, but in the choices we make and the truths we're willing to face. Olivia sits in prison now, serving a life sentence for Dad's murder and the Riverside deaths. Mom visits her sometimes. I don't. Some betrayals can never be forgiven. The last time I saw her, during the trial, she asked me why. Why Dad had trusted me with everything instead of her. Because, I told her, he knew I would choose justice over power. Something you never understood. Now, years later, when people ask about the Mitchell construction scandal, I tell them the real story. Not about the money or the corruption, but about a father's final act of courage, entrusting his quiet daughter with the truth that would both destroy and redeem his legacy. Sometimes the most devastating secrets come in simple cream-colored envelopes, sealed with wax and love. And sometimes the strength to face those secrets comes from the most unexpected places, like a teacher who chose truth over fortune, justice over power, and peace over empire.